The city was loud and full of lights. Alien voices shouted in many languages. Shops glowed with strange signs, and machines rolled through the streets. But in one dark corner, away from the bright stalls, sat a thin alien woman. She was covered in a torn cloak, her skin pale and her eyes tired. Her hands trembled as she held out a broken metal cup, hoping for a coin, a crumb, or even a kind look. Nobody cared. The tall merchants walked past her, their boots crushing the dust where she sat. Some sneered, some laughed, and some did not even see her at all. To them, she was not a person, only a shadow on the street. She whispered for food, but her voice was lost in the noise. The smell of roasted meat and hot oil filled the air. Yet she tasted only hunger. That day, the market was more crowded than ever. A new shipment of goods had arrived, and people were rushing to buy rare things. The beggar tried to stretch out her hand, but instead of kindness, she was met with anger. A group of strong alien guards pushed her aside, calling her useless. Her body hit the ground and her cup rolled away, spilling the few coins she had. The crowd laughed, stepping over the tiny bits of metal as if they were trash. Tears burned in her eyes, but she did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears meant nothing here. She had once been a child of a proud race, but war had taken everything. Her family, her home, her people, all gone. Now she was only a beggar, a forgotten shadow in a city that did not want her. But then, something changed. From the corner of her vision, she saw a group of cruel young aliens approach. Their eyes glowed with mischief, and in their hands were sharp sticks. They laughed as they circled her, calling her names. They wanted to see her suffer because pain made them feel strong. One of them kicked her cloak. Another tried to snatch her cup. Her thin body shook as she curled into herself. She thought this would be the end. Again, humiliation. Again, pain. But before the stick could strike her face, a shadow moved between them. It was tall, broad, and carried the scent of steel. The young aliens stopped laughing, their smiles fading as they saw who stood there. It was a human soldier, armored, calm, and dangerous. His hand gripped the weapon at his side, and his eyes were hard like stone. The market grew quiet for a moment, all noise swallowed by the silence of fear. The soldier did not shout, he did not move much, he simply stood between the beggar and her attackers. The young aliens who had laughed so loudly now stepped back, muttering excuses one by one. They disappeared into the crowd, leaving only the soldier and the beggar. The beggar looked up at him, her heart racing. Why would a human stop for her when no one else ever did? Humans were respected in this city, sometimes feared, sometimes hated, but never ignored. This one had chosen to see her, to stand for her. It was something she could not understand. He bent down slowly, his eyes meeting hers. His face was stern but not cruel. In a voice low and steady, he asked a question that struck her like thunder. Why are you begging here? Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. How could she explain years of hunger in one answer? How could she tell him about her ruined planet, her stolen family, her endless nights? Her silence was enough. Her broken clothes told her story better than words. The soldier reached into his pack and pulled out a small packet of food. He placed it gently into her hands. Warmth spread through her fingers as she held it. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but her voice was trapped. The soldier did not wait for words. He only gave her one last look, not of pity, but of strange curiosity. And then he turned to leave, but something inside her broke free. She could not let this moment end like all the others. She rose on shaking legs and followed him into the crowd. She did not know why, she did not know what she wanted, but her heart whispered that this human was different. Different from all the others who had walked past. Different from all who had laughed at her pain. The city lights blurred as she moved. After him, her stomach growled, her body weak, but her spirit pulled her forward. The soldier did not notice her at first. He walked steady, like someone with purpose, and she, the beggar in the shadows, followed quietly, step by step. Above them, the night sky opened with distant stars. Ships crossed like fireflies, carrying secrets across the galaxy. The beggar had never believed her life would change, but tonight, in the shadow of a human soldier, her path had shifted, and though she did not yet know it, The universe had just written a new beginning for her. The human soldier walked through the crowded city streets, his boots steady, his steps unshaken. He did not look back, his eyes forward, like a man with no time for shadows. Yet behind him the alien beggar followed, silent, her torn cloak dragging on the ground. Her heart beat fast, for she had never dared to follow anyone before. But something about this man pulled her forward, like gravity pulling a small stone to the ground. The city was alive with noise, voices shouting prices, machines humming, and traders arguing. But to the beggar, all of it was a blur. Her eyes stayed fixed on the soldier's back, tall and strong. She wondered, why did he save me? Why did he give me food? For years she had been invisible, yet in a single moment he had noticed her. It felt strange, frightening, but hopeful. The soldier turned a corner into a narrow street far from the busy markets. The lights were dim here, the sounds quieter. Only the distant hum of engines filled the air. The beggar hesitated, but then stepped into the shadows after him. The soldier stopped as if he knew she was there. Slowly, he turned his head, his sharp eyes catching her in the half-dark. She froze, caught like a thief, clutching the packet of food he had given her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, the soldier's voice cut the silence, low and even. "Why are you following me?" he asked. The beggar opened her mouth, but no words came, only a whisper of breath. Her fear wrapped around her throat, choking her voice. The soldier sighed, and then, instead of anger, he simply gestured for her to sit on a nearby crate. He sat across from her, calm, steady, watching her with those piercing human eyes. He pointed to the packet of food still untouched in her hands. "Eat," he said. Her fingers shook as she opened it, the smell of real bread and dried meat filling her nose. She ate quickly, like someone who did not trust the food to last. Every bite was a battle between hunger and shame. The soldier said, "Nothing," only watched, his face unreadable, when she finished. He leaned back slightly, arms crossed. "You've survived this long," he said quietly. "That means you're stronger than you look." The words struck her, because no one had ever called her strong. To others she was weak, useless, broken, but this man, this human, saw something else. She lowered her head, afraid to meet his gaze. Her voice was barely more than a whisper when she finally spoke. I'm nothing," she said. The soldier shook his head, slow and firm. "No one is nothing," he replied. The beggar felt tears sting her eyes, though she tried to hide them. She wanted to believe him. But how could she? Her whole life was proof that she was less than dust. Her people were gone, her home destroyed, her name forgotten. But still this soldier looked at her like she mattered, and that was a weight heavier than hunger. The soldier stood, his shadow tall in the narrow street. He looked around as if checking the corners for danger. Then he leaned closer and spoke in a voice low enough that only she could hear. "Others may not see it, but I see something in you," he said, his eyes locked on hers, sharp but not cruel. "There's a fire in you, even if you don't know it yet." The beggar's heart raced, confusion and fear twisting inside her. What fire could he mean? She was only a beggar, only a shadow. But before she could ask, the sound of footsteps echoed down the street. A group of aliens walked past, their eyes sliding over the soldier with quick respect. No one dared to trouble a human guard, yet the beggar shrank deeper into her cloak. One of the aliens muttered, "Why waste time on trash like her?" The soldier's jaw tightened, but he said nothing until they were gone. Then he looked back at the beggar and said, "You see, they don't understand, but I do." The night grew colder, the stars faint above the city glow. The soldier finally turned to leave, his task not spoken but clear in his movements. The beggar rose quickly, her voice breaking through the cage of fear. "Wait," she whispered, though it sounded more like a plea. The soldier paused, his back still to her. She did not know what she wanted to say, only that she did not want to be left alone again. He turned his head slightly, enough for her to see one eye catch the dim light. "Stay off the main streets tonight," he said, his tone like a warning. Hunters are moving, and they don't ask questions. Hunters. The word chilled her blood. Her mind filled with memories of dark ships' chains and the cries of her people. Her hands tightened on her cloak as fear clawed through her chest. But the soldier had already started walking again, and though every part of her screamed to hide, she found herself stepping forward, following once more. She did not know where this path would lead. She did not know if the soldier was truly friend or only danger. But deep inside, one small spark burned. A spark she had not felt in years. Hope. And in the silence of the night streets, the alien beggar followed the human soldier into the unknown. Her story was no longer trapped in the shadows, it had just begun. The night in the alien city was colder than usual. Wind rushed through narrow streets carrying the smell of smoke and oil. Shadows stretched across broken walls, and the few lights flickered weakly. The beggar walked behind the human soldier, each step slow and quiet. She did not know why she kept following him, yet her heart told her that leaving him would mean death. But somewhere else in the city, other footsteps moved, not friendly, not careless, but sharp, like blades cutting through silence. They belonged to the hunters, creatures who lived for tracking and capturing. Their eyes glowed faint yellow in the dark, their masks covered in strange marks of war, and their voices were like whispers of hunger. They had come for someone, and that someone was near. The beggar did not see them at first, but she felt something, a coldness in her bones, a memory of chains and fire. She remembered the ships that had taken her people. She remembered the sound of her mother's cry when they were dragged away. Her knees shook as she walked because her body knew the hunters before her eyes did. The soldier noticed her fear. He stopped and turned slightly, scanning the street with sharp human eyes. "What is it?" he asked in a low voice. The beggar could not answer, her mouth dry. Her hands pulled her cloak tighter around her body, as if cloth could protect her from what was coming. From the corner of the street, a shadow slipped forward. Then another, and another until 5 figures stood in the dim light. Their armor was black, their weapons curved, glowing faintly red. The beggar gasped, stepping back, her voice breaking into a whisper. "Hunters." The soldier's hand went to his weapon, his eyes narrowing. The hunters spread out, surrounding them slowly like wolves. One of them hissed in a voice that cut the air. "You thought you could hide her here, human?" The soldier's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The beggar froze, her heart pounding. They were not after him, they were after her. The hunters laughed softly, a sound like metal scraping. "She carries the mark," one said. "She cannot be allowed to live." The beggar shook her head violently, tears spilling. I don't know what they mean," she whispered. The soldier glanced at her, his eyes sharp and questioning, but there was no time for answers. The hunters moved in, weapons raised. The soldier stepped forward, his body a shield between them and the trembling alien woman. His voice was steady as stone. "You'll go through me first," the hunters hissed, their steps faster now. And then the street exploded into chaos. The soldier's weapon flashed, cutting through the dark with deadly precision. The hunters struck back, their blades clashing, sparks flying in the night. The beggar stumbled into a corner, her breath fast. She wanted to run, to hide, but her legs would not move. Her eyes stayed locked on the fight. The soldier fought like a storm, every move powerful and exact, but there were too many, and they were not afraid to die. One hunter broke past him and reached for the beggar. Her scream cut through the night as claws reached for her face. In that instant, something strange happened. Her skin burned with sudden heat. Glowing lines appeared faintly on her arms like symbols of fire. The hunter's hand recoiled as if struck by lightning. The beggar collapsed, gasping, the glow fading just as fast as it came. The soldier saw it, his eyes widening for a moment, but he had no time to ask. He struck down another hunter and pulled the beggar to her feet. "We need to move," he growled. Together they ran, the hunters chasing, their voices echoing like demons in the night. Through narrow alleys, past broken walls, and across bridges of rusted steel, they fled. The beggar stumbled often, but the soldier's grip kept her moving. Behind them, the hunters howled. One shouted, "She cannot reach the human leader. Stop her at any cost." The beggar's blood turned to ice. Why were they so desperate? What secret did they know about her that she herself did not? Finally, they slipped into an abandoned building. The soldier pushed her behind a broken wall, his chest rising with heavy breaths. He looked at her, his eyes hard. "They're after you, not me," he said quietly. She nodded weakly, tears on her cheeks. "I don't know why," she whispered. I don't understand." The soldier frowned. But deep inside, he already suspected the truth. The hunters outside searched, their voices crawling through the night. "She cannot escape," one said. "The bloodline must end." The beggar closed, her eyes shaking. Bloodline. The word echoed in her head, stirring memories she could not catch. Memories of her people, of a symbol carved into stone, of fire and crowns. Her hands glowed faintly again, only for a second. The soldier noticed, his face unreadable. He leaned closer and whispered, "There is more to you than you know." The beggar shook her head, desperate to deny it. "I'm nothing," she said again, but her voice trembled. The soldier looked at her with a steady gaze. "No," he said firmly. "You are the reason they are here, and that means you are not nothing." Outside, the hunters grew restless, their shadows moving closer. The city slept on, unaware that a war was already starting in its streets and in the broken ruins of the building. The beggar and the soldier prepared for what would come next. The hunters would not stop, not until she was captured or dead. And the beggar, once only a shadow in the marketplace, now carried a secret. Even she did not understand. Her life was no longer only about survival. It had become a mystery, a danger, and a key to something far greater. And as the soldier's weapon gleamed in the dim light, the beggar realized one thing. Her past was not finished with her. It was only beginning to wake. The night sky above the alien city glowed with ships flying like silver birds. Engines roared, in the distance leaving trails of light across the darkness. Inside the ruins of an old building, the beggar sat shaking, her arms wrapped around her knees. The human soldier stood near the broken wall, his weapon ready, his eyes scanning every shadow outside. The hunters prowled like wolves, their whispers sharp and cruel. The beggar felt her heart pound like a drum. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow looked like claws. She whispered, "They will never stop. They will find me." The soldier glanced at her, his voice calm but strong. "Then we leave this city tonight." She shook her head, fear flooding her chest. "I can't. I have nowhere to go." The soldier's jaw tightened. "Then we make somewhere," he said. The hunters moved closer, their boots scraping stone. The soldier knew time was running out. He pulled the beggar to her feet and whispered, "There is a spaceport nearby. If we reach it, we can steal a ship." The beggar's eyes widened. "A ship? I've never left the ground." The soldier gave a small, quick nod. "Then tonight you will." They slipped out of the ruins, moving through narrow alleys. The beggar's legs trembled, but the soldier's grip pulled her forward, behind them. The hunters caught their trail. Shouts filled the night. Weapons clashed against walls, sparks flying. The beggar stumbled, but the soldier lifted her easily, carrying her for a short distance before setting her down again. His strength was a wall she could lean on, but fear still ate at her heart. The spaceport came into view, a massive field of metal and light. Ships of all sizes rested there, their engines glowing softly. Guards patrolled, traders argued, and machines rolled across the floors. The beggar gasped at the sight, her eyes wide. She had seen ships before, but always from a distance. Now she was close enough to touch one. The soldier pointed toward a smaller craft near the far corner. "That one," he whispered. "Quick, before they close the gates." They hurried, slipping through the crowd like shadows, but the hunters were already entering the spaceport. Their yellow eyes scanned the area, their voices hissing orders. One of them shouted, "Find her before she reaches the humans." The beggar's chest tightened. Why did they fear her reaching humans? What secret was tied to her blood? They reached the small ship. Its door half open, its metal old but strong. The soldier pulled her inside and began pressing buttons on the control panel. The beggar sat down, her body shaking, her hands gripping the seat. "What if they catch us?" she whispered. The soldier glanced at her, his voice steady. "Then we fight. But if this ship flies, they won't catch us." The hunters saw the ship powering up. They rushed forward, weapons raised, firing at the hull. The ground shook with explosions, sparks showering across the port. The beggar cried out, covering her head. But the soldier pulled the lever and the ship roared to life. Engines screamed. Fire burst beneath them. The ship lifted from the ground, heavy but rising. The beggar pressed against the window, watching the hunters shrink below. Their shouts filled the night. But soon the noise faded, as stars swallowed. The city, for the first time in her life, the beggar left the ground. The ship cut through the sky, breaking past clouds, reaching the black sea of space. Her breath caught as she saw endless stars stretching forever. Worlds far away glowed faintly. Ships moved like fireflies across the dark. She whispered, "It's beautiful." Her eyes filled with tears, not of pain but of wonder. The soldier glanced at her, his face calm but softer now. "You've never flown before?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "Never. I never thought I would leave that place." But peace did not last. Warning lights flashed across the ship's panel. The soldier's eyes narrowed. "They've locked onto us," he said. The beggar's body stiffened. "What does that mean?" The soldier's hands moved fast over the controls. "It means they're chasing us in a war cruiser." The stars shifted as the ship jerked violently. Through the window, the beggar saw a massive shadow appear. It was larger than anything she had ever seen. A ship like a floating city, covered in black armor. Its weapons glowed, ready to fire. Her heart sank, fear crushing her chest. "We can't fight that," she whispered. The soldier's eyes burned with determination. "Then we run faster." The cruiser fired, beams of red light cutting through the dark. The small ship shook, alarms screaming. The beggar gripped her seat, her nails digging into the fabric. The soldier steered sharply, weaving through debris and old satellites. The stars blurred as they moved faster, but the cruiser followed, relentless. Every shot shook the ship, metal groaning under the stress. The beggar could hardly breathe. Her mind raced with thoughts of chains, prisons, and death. But then, a small spark burned in her chest. She remembered the strange glow on her skin, the marks that had appeared when the hunter touched her. She whispered to herself, "Why me? What am I?" But no answer came. Only more questions. The soldier's voice cut through her fear. "Hold on, we're not finished yet." He pressed a final button, and the ship's engines screamed louder. The stars stretched into lines, the darkness bending. And then, with a sudden burst of light, the ship jumped forward, disappearing into the vast unknown. The beggar gasped, staring out the window. The hunters were gone, the cruiser far behind. Only silence remained, and the endless stars. She slumped in her seat, exhausted, her chest rising and falling. The soldier leaned back, breathing hard. He looked at her with steady eyes. "This is only the beginning," he said, and deep inside, the beggar knew he was right. Her escape was not freedom. It was the opening of a door she had never dared to see. The small ship drifted in the endless dark of space, its engines tired, its metal scarred. The beggar sat curled in her seat, her eyes half closed, her body heavy from fear and exhaustion. But her mind was restless. Images of the hunters, the glowing marks on her arms, and the human soldier's sharp words filled her thoughts. She whispered to herself, "What am I? Why do they want me?" The soldier sat across from her, checking the ship's controls. His face was calm, but his eyes carried questions he did not speak. At last he broke the silence, his voice low, steady. "You're hiding something," he said. The beggar shook her head quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. "No, I don't know anything. I am only nothing." But even as she spoke, her voice trembled as if her own words betrayed her. The soldier leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "When that hunter touched you, your skin burned with light," he said. "I saw it. I don't know what it means, but they were afraid of it." The beggar hugged herself, her body trembling. I don't understand it, I swear, it just happened. Her voice broke and tears slid down her pale cheeks. The soldier studied her for a long moment, then leaned back. Maybe you don't know, but they do, he said. And that makes you dangerous to them. The words chilled her. Dangerous, she had never been dangerous to anyone. She was always weak, always hunted, always nothing. Yet the hunters had spoken of bloodlines, of ending her life before she reached humans. What truth did they fear so much? Before she could think further, alarms screamed across the ship. The lights flickered, metal shook, and the beggar's heart leapt into her throat. The soldier rushed. To the controls. They've found us, he said sharply. The beggar's stomach twisted. How did they find us again? The soldier's jaw tightened. They always find what they want. A beam of red light struck the ship's side, throwing them against the walls. The beggar cried out, gripping her seat. Another blast shook the hull, sparks raining from the ceiling. The soldier's voice was steady even in chaos. They'll try to board us. And he was right. The ship shuddered as a claw-like hook pierced the hull. Metal screamed, doors locked, red lights flashed. The soldier pulled his weapon and stood at the center of the room. He looked at the beggar, his voice firm. Stay behind me, no matter what. The airlock burst open, smoke filling the room. Hunters stormed inside, their masks glowing, their weapons ready. The soldier fought like fire, every strike cutting down enemies, but there were too many, their numbers endless. The beggar screamed as claws grabbed her arms, dragging her away. The soldier roared, cutting through one enemy after another, but a heavy blow struck his head and the world went black for him. The beggar was thrown into a dark cell deep inside the enemy cruiser. Chains wrapped around her wrists, cold metal pressing into her skin. She shivered, fear crushing her chest. The hunters stood outside the bars, whispering to each other. She must not live, one said. She carries the blood of the old line. Another hissed. The beggar shook her head wildly. No, I don't know what you mean. I am nothing. I am no one. But the hunters only laughed, their voices sharp like blades in the silence of the cell. Her body trembled. Her heart pounded, her breath quick, and then pain struck her chest. It was fire, burning through her veins. She screamed, falling to her knees. Her arms glowed with bright lines, symbols that spread across her skin like rivers of light. The chains cracked, smoke rising from the metal. Her eyes widened as the marks blazed brighter. The hunters outside stepped back in shock. It has awakened, one whispered, fear in his voice. The beggar fell forward, gasping, her body glowing. Images flashed in her mind, a throne of fire, a crown of stone, her people standing proud. She saw her mother's face, her father's voice calling her name, a name she had forgotten long ago. She cried out, No, I don't want this. But the light inside her would not stop. The cell shook, the walls cracked. The hunters raised their weapons, but fear clouded their movements, and then the soldier came. His body bruised, his weapon bloodied, but his eyes, burning with determination. He cut through the guards, breaking into her cell. He froze for a moment as he saw her glowing, her body wrapped in light. But instead of fear, he moved closer, his voice strong. Come with me. The beggar gasped, tears in her glowing eyes. I don't know what I am, she whispered. The soldier reached out his hand, steady and sure. Maybe not, he said, but you are not alone anymore. She placed her trembling hand in his. The glow softened but did not fade completely. Together they ran through the halls, alarms screaming, hunters chasing. But the beggar was no longer only weak. The marks on her arms burned when enemies drew close, forcing them back. She did not understand it, but she could feel a strange power within her. Something deep, something ancient. At last, they reached the hangar, stealing another ship. As they flew into the stars again, the beggar sat silently, her body still glowing faintly. The soldier glanced at her, his voice quiet. You are not what you think you are. The beggar lowered her head, whispering, Then what am I? The soldier did not answer, because even he did not know yet. But one truth was clear. The beggar was no longer just a shadow on the street. She carried a secret that could shake the galaxy, and the hunters would never stop until it was destroyed. The Yao ship drifted quietly through the stars, far from the hunter's cruiser. Inside, the beggar sat near the window, her arms still faintly glowing with strange marks. Her eyes were wide with fear and confusion, her hands trembling as she stared. At the light on her skin, she whispered again and again, "What am I? What am I?" The human soldier watched her from the pilot's seat, his face calm but thoughtful. He had seen soldiers, killers, leaders, but never a beggar who burned with power she did not understand. For a long time, silence filled the small ship. Finally, the soldier spoke, his voice low and steady. "You are more than what they made you believe." The beggar shook her head quickly, her cloak pulled tight around her. "No, I was nothing. I begged, I starved, I hid. How can I be more?" The soldier's eyes stayed fixed on her, because hunters do not chase nothing. They chase threats. They chase hope. The words sank deep into her chest. Hope. No one had ever used that word for her before. She lowered her eyes, afraid of what it meant. The soldier leaned closer, his voice firm, but not unkind. "You have a choice now. You can keep running, or you can stand with us, with humans, with those who fight back." Her throat tightened, her voice small. "But I don't know how to fight." The soldier gave a faint smile. "Then we teach you." Hours later, the ship landed on a hidden base carved into the side of a barren moon. Soldiers in human armor walked through the metal halls, their voices strong, their faces sharp. The beggar kept her cloak around her, her steps uncertain. Everywhere she looked, humans moved with purpose, their eyes filled with fire she had never seen before. They were not beggars, not shadows. They were warriors. The soldier guided her into a training hall. Here, soldiers sparred. With weapons, others lifted heavy crates, some studied star maps. The beggar felt small, out of place. Her cloak dragged on the floor, her thin frame weak among giants. But when the soldiers looked at her, their eyes did not carry hate. Instead, there was curiosity, a question, maybe even respect. The soldier spoke to the commander of the base, a tall human leader with silver hair and sharp eyes. "This is the one the hunters want," he said. The commander studied her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing. The beggar lowered her head, ashamed, afraid of rejection. But the commander surprised her with words she never expected. "Then she stays under our protection," he said. "If the hunters fear her, we will guard her." The beggar felt her chest tighten, her eyes burning with tears. No one had ever spoken of protecting her. She had always been left behind, forgotten, alone. Now humans, strangers, chose to shield her. Days passed on the moon base. The beggar slowly learned the ways of humans. She watched soldiers train, their discipline, their loyalty, their strength. She listened to their stories of battles, of sacrifice, of standing together even when the odds were impossible. It was strange, but in their eyes, she saw something she had not seen in years, hope. And slowly she began to feel a spark of it inside herself. The soldier trained her gently, showing her how to hold a weapon, how to stand firm. Her hands shook at first, her body weak, but he was patient, his voice steady. "Strength is not only in the body," he said, "it begins here." He touched his chest where the heart beat. She nodded, though doubt still clouded her mind. One night, as she sat alone in the training hall, she touched the marks on her arms. The glow returned faintly, soft and steady. Her reflection in the metal wall showed not just a beggar, but someone different, she whispered. "Could I be more?" The soldier's voice answered from behind her. "You already are." But peace did not last. Scouts returned to the base with grim news. The hunters were gathering an army, their ships spreading across the stars. Their goal was clear: to destroy the humans and to erase her from existence. The commander called the soldiers together, his voice strong. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for every world they would enslave." The beggar stood at the edge of the hall, her heart racing. She felt their eyes turn to her, some with doubt, some with hope. She lowered her head, whispering, "I am not a leader. I am only a shadow." But the commander shook his head. "You survived when others fell. You carry something they fear that makes you more than a shadow." The soldier stepped beside her, his voice calm but firm. "Your voice may change the war," he said. Her eyes widened. "My voice?" He nodded slowly. "Sometimes the weakest one carries the strongest truth, and that truth can move armies." The beggar's chest tightened, her hands trembling. Could it be true? Could her broken life matter in a war this great? As the humans prepared for battle, she felt the weight of choice on her shoulders. Run again or rise. Her heart whispered the answer, though fear still fought inside her. And so, the beggar who once begged in the shadows now stood in a hall of warriors, the glow on her arms soft but steady, her voice quiet but beginning to rise. She was no longer just a beggar, no longer only a shadow. She was becoming something else, a spark in the dark, a rising hope. The moon base shook with the sound of engines. Ships lined the hangar, their wings spread like steel birds ready. To fly into war, soldiers moved quickly, loading weapons, checking armor, speaking in sharp voices. The beggar stood among them, her cloak gone, her arms glowing faintly with the strange marks of her bloodline. She felt the weight of every eye on her, some filled with doubt, some with respect. Her heart beat so fast she thought it would break her chest. The commander spoke, his voice echoing through the hall. "The hunters come with fire and chains, but we will meet them with steel and courage. We will not let them take another world. We will not let them break us." The soldiers roared in answer, their voices like thunder shaking the walls. The beggar lowered her head, her hands trembling. She whispered to herself, "I am not ready." But the human soldier beside her placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You are more ready than you believe," he said quietly. The alarms blared, red lights flashing across the base. The hunter's fleet had arrived, their warships filling the stars like a storm. Engines roared as human ships launched, one after another, cutting through the black sky. The beggar stepped into a small transport with the soldier, her stomach twisted, fear biting her heart. But deep inside, the spark of hope glowed brighter than ever before. The battle began in fire. Explosions ripped across space, beams of light tearing through the dark. Human ships clashed with hunters, metal against metal, courage against cruelty. The beggar sat inside the transport, her eyes wide, her hands gripping the seat. Every blast shook her body. Every scream of the comms made her chest tighten. She whispered, "Why am I here? I cannot fight like them." The soldier looked at her, his face steady even in chaos. "You fight in another way," he said. "Your voice, your presence, it gives them something to believe in." The transport landed on a battlefield torn by fire. The beggar stepped out, her feet shaking on the broken ground. Hunters advanced in waves, their claws glowing, their weapons sharp. Humans pushed back, their voices rising in shouts of courage. The beggar saw soldiers glance at her, their faces filled with exhaustion and fear, and then she understood. She was not here to fight with weapons. She was here to remind them why they fought at all. Her voice rose, weak at first, then stronger. "Do not give up. You are not alone. We stand together." The soldiers looked at her, their tired eyes lighting with fire. They shouted louder, pushed harder, fought with new strength. The beggar's hands glowed bright, the marks on her skin burning like fire in the night. Every hunter that drew near recoiled, their eyes filled with fear of her light. The beggar raised her arms, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "You will not take us, not again." The hunters fell back, their lines breaking under the weight of human courage and her strange, burning power. The commander's voice thundered over the comms. "They fear her, they fear what she carries, press forward." The humans roared, their ships diving, their blades cutting, their fire blazing. The hunters screamed as their fleet crumbled, their warships burning in the sky. The beggar stood. Among the humans, her cloak of shadow gone forever. In its place was light, a light that turned fear into strength. When the battle ended, silence fell across the broken land. The humans stood victorious, battered but unbroken. The beggar walked, slowly across the field, her body trembling, her face streaked with tears. She had survived not as a shadow but as something greater. The soldier came to her side, his face tired but calm. "You saved them," he said softly. The beggar shook her head. "They saved me," she whispered, her eyes shining. Days later, the humans gathered in the great hall of their leader. The beggar stood before them, her torn cloak replaced with clean robes. Her arms still carried the glowing marks, symbols that no chain could ever erase. The commander spoke, his voice filled with respect. "This one came to us as a beggar, but she showed us hope. She stood with us in fire. She reminded us who we are." The soldiers cheered, their voices thunder in the hall. The beggar lowered her head, her tears falling. Never had she been honored, never had she been seen as more than nothing. And then the human leader stepped forward, his eyes on her. He took her hand gently, his voice calm but strong. "You are no longer a beggar in the shadows," he said. "You are the light beside us, and if you will be my partner in this war and beyond." The hall fell silent, every heart waiting for her answer. The beggar's chest tightened, her voice shaking. "I was nothing, but you gave me hope. If you will have me, I will stand beside you." The hall erupted with cheers, the sound shaking the walls. The beggar stood at the side of the human leader, no longer hidden, no longer weak. She was no longer only a beggar, no longer only a shadow. She was beloved, chosen, and seen. From the streets of hunger to the halls of power, from despair to hope, her journey had ended here. But it was also a beginning, for the galaxy would remember not the beggar who begged in the dirt, but the woman who rose with humans, who turned fear into fire, and who became the wife of a leader. The beggar was gone, the beloved had risen,